So we are now live.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Good evening, members of the committee, members of the public, applicants, agents. I now call the Committee of Adjustment for the City of Brantford for May 5th, 2021 to order. So I'll first just start off by reading some protocol related to this meeting format and COVID-19. And then we will get into some, we'll take attendance, and then I'll read some more protocol that's more specific to our general meeting format. And then we will get into the application. So as this meeting is held electronically due to the COVID-19 pandemic, I will go over some rules and procedures for the benefit of the members and the viewing public. This meeting is being streamed live via City of Brantford YouTube account. All members of the committee will be muted upon entering the meeting and throughout when they are not speaking in order to reduce background noise. All webcams for the committee member shall be turned on throughout the meeting. If a member needs to leave their seat, please leave their camera on so that we recognize that you are away. Staff will be requested to join the video meeting should they need to answer any questions of the members. Any movers and seconders of any motion shall be indicated by raising your physical hand on camera. And myself, the chair, will call out who the mover and the seconder are. All members of the committee are participating via online video conference will vote by a physical show of hands. A recorded vote will be taken by the clerk. Applicants, agents, owners, and delegations are also participating via Zoom or on their phone. All persons wishing to speak to the items on the agenda were required to register by 9 a.m. Any delegations received in written format have been provided to the members of the committee and will form part of the meeting record. So in the event that a connection or service interruption does occur that affects quorum of the committee, we may recess the meeting for up to 15 minutes in order to allow the committee to regain quorum. If quorum is not achieved, then we will have to adjourn the meeting. So at this time, I will ask the clerk to take attendance.
Thank you very much. Tara Gaskin.
Present.
Thank you. Greg Kempa.
Present.
Thank you. Lee Reiner.
Present.
Dan Miesniak.
Present.
Michael Bodner.
Present.
Thank you. Virginia Kershaw.
Present.
And Christina Brooks.
Present.
Thank you.
Excellent. At this time, I'll ask if any committee members have any conflict of interest for any of the items to be heard this evening. Seeing none. So now I'll read the meeting procedures for our meeting format, kind of give you an idea of how the meeting will be run this evening. So this meeting is held in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act. The purpose of this meeting is to discuss minor variance, consent, and severance applications and give members of the public the opportunity to ask questions, express concerns, or provide comment either in support or against the application. Each hearing is generally dealt with in accordance to the order that they appear on the agenda. In the event that the hearing is not completed on this date, it will be adjourned to a later date, at which time the committee may hear further submissions. At the conclusion of each hearing, this committee will make a decision on each application. The names of those individuals who speak on any item tonight will appear within the meeting minutes. Anyone wishing to receive further notice of any hearing, including a copy of the committee's decision, please contact the city's clerk department. Minor variance decisions are final if there are no appeals 20 days after the committee's decision. And consent application decisions are final if there are no appeals 20 days after the notice of the decision has been issued. So tonight's order of delegation will be as follows. We will make our way through the agenda. For each item, we will have the applicant or agent join us in this room at this table to present the details of their report, followed by an opportunity for the committee to ask questions. We will then invite staff to join us to present the details of their staff report and their recommendation, followed by an opportunity for questions. We will then open the public hearing to the members of the public. So anyone who has registered or as a delegation to speak to any items this evening, or if any members have any questions after hearing the applicant's presentation and the staff's presentation, that's the opportunity to join us and voice your concerns. The last portion there, once we close the public portion, we will have an opportunity for any clarification, whether it's the applicant providing clarification or a response to any concerns from the residents or any additional questions from the committee. And with that being said, we can get into our first item on the agenda. So this is a minor variance application for 501 Shellards Lane. And the applicant who's registered this evening is from MHBC Planning. Okay, so I see Stephanie has joined us. Stephanie, welcome. If you want to just state your name, who you represent, where you're from, who you represent, and provide us with the details of your request.
Great, thank you. Good evening, members of committee. My name is Stephanie Murdich, and I'm a planner with MHBC Planning, and I'm here this evening on behalf of Lozani Homes. I'm here for two applications this evening, so I'll start with the first one. And Dan, you can jump in, but I'm assuming that you want me to just start with the first application and then we'll come back to the second one after.
Yeah, they are listed as separate items on our agenda, so we will deal with them separately.
Great, thanks for clarifying. So the first application is A19 2021. So this applies to two lots along the boundary of the subdivision. We have reviewed the staff report, and I know there's a plan in the staff report that shows where these two lots are located. So the variances for the first lot, which is block 248 or lot 219, is to permit a reduction in the minimum lot area of 294 square meters, whereas a minimum of 300 square meters is required. And the second variance for that lot is the permit a reduction in the rear yard of 6.67 meters, whereas 7 meters is required. And for block 244 or lot 223, again, it's a rear yard reduction request of 6.79 meters, whereas the 7 meter rear yard is required. So as it's noted and explained in the staff report, the development of these lots requires parts of different blocks to be merged to become residential lots. And the reason for that really is that Lozani and Empire have two separate subdivisions, and these specific lots share a small portion of each subdivision, and the lots are required to become merged on title to create building lots. And the plans in the staff report show in detail how these lots require the merging of those blocks. So in summary, the variances maintain the intent of the official plan and the zoning bylaw, and will allow the development of two single detached dwellings, which are part of the recently registered plan of subdivision. So it was always intended that these lots would be merged and would create single detached dwelling units. And these variances are just required to allow that to occur. So I'm happy to answer any questions on those, and I do have the plans available. If it's helpful, I can pull those up. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Do I have any questions from the committee to the agent? Seeing none, so we will invite staff to join us who can present the details of their report.
Good evening, Chair and committee members. My name is Joshua Scram. I'm a long-range planner with the City of Brantford, and I'm here to present on two separate applications regarding 501 Shellards Lane and draft approved plan of subdivision file 29T16502. So first I'll present application A19 2021 501 Shellards Lane, as mentioned, block 248, lot 219, and block 241, lot 223. Next slide, please. So just starting with an aerial, planning staff received a minor variance application as indicated for 501 Shellards Lane, block 248, lot 219, and block 241, lot 223. The subject lands are located west of Powell Road and south of Shellards Lane. As part of the proposed lotting with the adjacent Empire subdivision, block 248 and lot 219 I apologize. Block 248, lot 219 is to be located on an interior lot on the west side of Wooded Bean Drive, and block 241 Lot 223 is to be located on a corner lot at the intersection of Ladd Avenue and Elkington Lane. Block 248, Lot 219 is designated neighborhood residential in the West of Conklin Secondary Plan in the City of Brantford Official Plan, and is dual zone residential type D zone exception 11 and residential type C zone exception 21 in the City of Brantford's zoning bylaw. Block 241, Lot 223 is also designated as neighborhood residential in the West of Conklin Secondary Plan in the City of Brantford Official Plan and zone residential type C zone exception 21 in the City of Brantford zoning bylaw. Next slide, please. As mentioned, the subject lands have currently not been assigned municipal addresses, as the plan of subdivision and corresponding subdivision agreement for this phase have not been registered, and therefore lots have not formally been created. Next slide, please. The applicant is proposing to develop 2 single detached dwellings, as mentioned, as part of the proposed lotting with lands to the east, which were developed by Empire Communities. There are a number of park blocks that are to be merged on title to become residential building lots. This land assembly was identified in previous planning staff reports to council. The applicant and the neighboring landowner were always aware that this land assembly would be required in order to develop the subject land. So the applicant, and as Stephanie had mentioned, to facilitate the development as proposed, the minor variance will need to be approved to permit a lot area of 294 square meters, whereas a minimum lot area of 300 square meters is required for block 248, lot 219, a rear yard of 6.67 meters, where a rear yard of 7 meters is required for block 248, lot 219, and a rear yard of 6.79 meters, where a rear yard of 7 meters is required for block 241, lot 223. So next slide, please. So in order for a minor variance to be approved, an application must meet the 4 tests of section 45 of the Planning Act. The minor variance regarding the proposed reduced lot coverage for block 248, lot 219 is considered minor in nature and appropriate use and development of the vacant lands. It meets the intent of the zoning bylaw, ensuring that the lot is large enough to accommodate the proposed single detached dwelling, off-street parking and amenity space. And the proposed reduced rear yards for block 248, lot 219 and block 241, lot 223 are considered minor in nature and appropriate use and development of the lands, as it's not expected to have adverse impact on the planned neighboring properties. The requested relief is consistent with previous approvals by council for both the Empire subdivisions to the east and west of the subject lands, including the draft plan of subdivision. It's planning staff's opinion that the minor variance application meets the intent of the official plan and zoning bylaw, is minor in nature, and is appropriate for the future development of the lands. And for the reasons mentioned, the minor variance satisfies the criteria of section 45(1) of the Planning Act, and staff recommends that the application A19-2021 be approved.
Okay, thank you, Josh. Do I have any questions from the committee to staff? I see no questions. So at this point, I will open up the public portion of the hearing for this item. And my records show that I have no registered members of the public who wish to speak to this item, and I will just confirm that with our clerk, Emma.
Through the chair, that's correct. We do not have any registrants for this item.
Okay, so with that being said, I'll formally close the public portion of this item, and I'll ask the committee if they have any questions of clarification. Greg? Or were you?
Sorry, Chair, I was jumping the gun and was going to proceed to move to approve the application A19/2021.
Okay. Can I get a seconder? Virginia? Any questions or discussion on that motion? Seeing none, we will call the vote.
Thank you. Bear with me for one moment, just switching screens. Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand and leave it raised until you hear your name called. Tara Gaskin, Virginia Kershaw, Michael Bodner, Lee Reiner, Greg Kempa, Dan Demisiak, Christina Brooks. Thank you. That carried on a unanimous.
Okay, Next item, very similar application, again, minor variance application A22 2021 for 501 Schellers Lane. Stephanie's here still. Any additional information that you'd like to add for this particular application?
Thanks, Dan. I don't think there's a lot to add to this one. Again, we read the staff report and it's thorough and explains the variance that's requested. The only detail that I would note is that this is not part of a similar situation where it's a combination of two part blocks. It's just as a result of an error in the technical siting of the building. And in this case, the variance is to permit a reduction in the exterior side yard. And that we believe that the variance will still meet the intent of the official plan and the zoning bylaw and allow for that sufficient separation because it is a corner lot and allow for access sufficient space for landscaping and distance to the public sidewalk and public street. So I think I'll leave it at that, but I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any. Thank you.
Do we have any questions of staff, our agent? No questions, so I will invite Josh back to present the details of the staff report and the recommendation.
Thank you. I think maybe based on the overview from the agent, I'll ask that we move to slide 12 of my presentation, showing the site sketch for lot 88 within draft plan of subdivision file number 29C16502. And I think what I'll do is I'll jump right to reviewing aspects of the minor variance. And in order for it to be approved, an application must meet the four tests of section 45 of the Planning Act. And I think one of the things I'd like to note is while the subject lands are designated in neighborhood center on Schedule 7.2 of the West Algonquin Secondary Plan and the city's official plan, and indicate that single detached and semi-detached housing is not permitted, planning staff note that section 19.1.3.2 of the West Algonquin Secondary Plan allows for flexibility that could be refined through the submitted neighborhood plan. Council adopted the implementing applications on December 19, 2017, and those applications included an amended neighborhood plan as submitted by the applicant, and therefore the proposed development is deemed to conform to the official plan. The minor variance regarding the reduced exterior side yard of 1.89 meters is considered minor in nature and appropriate use and development of the vacant land and meets the intent of the zoning bylaw, ensuring that appropriate space is maintained between adjacent land uses, including the proposed municipal sidewalks and future extension of Blackburn Drive. And there is a consistent and enhanced streetscape with respect to the location of the proposed dwelling. It's planning staff's opinion that the minor variance application meets the intent of the official plan and zoning bylaw, is minor in nature, and is appropriate for the future development of the lands. For the reasons mentioned above, the minor variance satisfies the criteria of section 45(1) of the Planning Act, and staff recommends that application A22 2021 be approved.
Excellent. Any questions from the committee to staff? Seeing none. So again, I'll open up the public portion of this hearing for this item. And again, my notes indicate no members of the public have registered to speak to this item, and we'll just confirm that again with our clerk.
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay, so I'll formally close the public portion. I will ask if the committee have any questions of clarification. Seeing none, I will look for a motion to be put on the floor. Greg?
Mr. Chair, I would move that application A22/2021 be approved as shown in the minutes.
Thank you, Greg. Seconder? Virginia again. Keep it consistent. Any discussion on that motion? No discussion, so we'll have the clerk call the vote.
Thank you. All those in favor, please raise your hand and leave it raised until you hear your name called. Tara Gaskin, Virginia Kershaw, Michael Bodner, Lee Reiner, Greg Kempa, Dan Nemesniak, Crystal Brooks. Thank you. That carried unanimously.
Very good. Moving on to the third item on our agenda this evening. This is a Another minor variance application, A21 2021 for 13 Edward Street. Is our agent or applicant present?
Through the chair, this is Emma, the clerk. Yes, we did have a couple late registrants to this, so we're going to bring them all in at the same time. Richie Kana is the agent, and then we did have the applicants register late, so they weren't on the list that went out to committee, but they are here, and we are bringing them in now.
Okay, so when you're ready, yeah, you can unmute yourselves and video if you have it.
I'm unmuted, but sorry, I don't have video at the moment.
Yeah, no problem. So Richie, I would assume you'll be taking the lead. If not, feel free to throw it over to the applicant. But if you want to just provide us with the details of your minor variance application, and then we can ask any questions as required.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you very much. So our application is to add a cover front porch, like a roof structure above the existing front entrance in front of this temple, with a crafted decorative structure that goes above. And the setbacks are variances for the setbacks for the existing conditions, as it sits fairly close to the front yard of the property.
Okay, and we do have a rendering of your proposal or an elevation of your proposal in our agenda package for review.
Correct. Yeah.
Anything else that you'd like to add at this point?
No, I did see the comments. It seemed like everything was in favor as far as the existing setbacks. So we're not procuring any further out. We're bearing on the existing structure there. And it's freestanding, so it's not attached to the building.
Okay, very good. Do I have any questions of the agent or applicant from the committee?
No.
I see no questions at this time, so we will invite staff. This one was authored by Casey to present the staff recommendation.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. My name is Casey Pongrass, and I'm a senior planner with the Planning Department. If you could move on to the next slide. Thank you. So this is a minor variance application that's been received for 13 Edward Street. The subject lands are located on the southwest corner of Edward Street and Gordon Street, and they are designated residential low area in the official plan, and they're zoned institutional school zone I2 in the zoning bylaw, both of which permit places of worship. Next slide. So the existing structure on this property, it's a place of worship that was constructed in approximately 1911. And there's a parking lot in the rear of the property. If you could go to the next slide. So the front of the existing church contains a set of stairs that are located approximately 1.73 meters from the front lot line. And they encroach into the front yard 3.16 meters. The bylaw requires a setback of 1.2 meters from the front yard, so the existing steps are compliant, and the zoning bylaw permits an encroachment of no more than 2.5 meters. So the existing encroachment of 1.3 or 3.16 meters rather is considered legal non-conforming. Next slide, Alexander. So the applicants are proposing to construct a porch system over top of the existing stairs. To facilitate the addition, the applicants require a variance to permit a front yard setback of 1.15 meters rather than the 1.2 meters that's required. And they would are requesting permission for an encroachment of 3.74 meters rather than the 2.5 that's permitted by the zoning bylaw. This application was circulated to staff and departments and agencies for comment. Heritage staff notes that 13 Edward Street has been identified as a property that merits inclusion on the Heritage Registry as a non-designated listed property because it satisfies the criteria for determining cultural heritage value. They don't have any concerns with the current proposal because the changes don't affect the main structure and are not attached to the main structure and could be removed at any time. With respect to the public comments, notice that this application was circulated to all property owners within 60 meters of the property by mail. And there was also a notice, a sign posted in front of the building. I should note to the committee that there wasn't an issue with the notice of public meeting in that on the notice in 2 different locations, my email address was located on the notice. In one location, it was there was a typographical error. However, upon further investigation, it was identified by a ratepayer this morning. So further along on the notice, there was the correct address, and on the notice sign posted in front of the property, the email address was correct as well. In addition, the phone number was also listed on the notice. So as a result of that, there was a ratepayer that was concerned. I discussed this matter with the manager of development planning as well as the clerk's department, and we reviewed it with respect to the notification requirements under the Planning Act. It was determined that it did meet the criteria for notification. However, I'll leave that in the committee's hands. Based on this circulation, I did receive 4 letters of objection. One of them contained a list of surrounding property owners that they were speaking on behalf of. So I believe that all of those items of correspondence have been circulated to the committee and to the applicants. The concerns noted by the ratepayers are incompatibility with the neighborhood, possible loss of property values, incompatible architecture with the surrounding neighborhood, visibility concerns, and there were also some concerns noted with the operation of the church in terms of parking, refuse, and those sorts of things. With respect to staff's recommendation and analysis, we reviewed the application with respect to the 4 tests under Section 45 of the Planning Act. Staff feel that the application is minor in nature as it's not expected to impact the adjacent properties. The application is desirable for the appropriate development and use of the land, and it meets the intent of the official plan and the zoning bylaw, and therefore staff is recommending approval of the application. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Casey. Any questions from the committee of staff at this time, whether it's related to the application or based on their comments of the adequate notice? Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a couple questions for staff. I just wanted to get some clarification now. The staff had mentioned that the existing steps are already encroaching, but they're considered a legal non-conforming use. So if you look at what the applicant wants, which is 3.74 meters to accommodate the column, you're only talking about just over half a meter more, which is about 2 feet more. Is that how I understand the application?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, that's correct. So the existing front yard encroachment is 3.16 meters, and they are asking for 3.74, I believe it is. So yes. So that's the encroachment into the front yard, the setback from the front yard. So there's 2 variances we're looking for here. One is the encroachment that the stairs do from the building into the yard, and the other is the measurement from the front yard to the closest encroachment. So the front yard to the closest point of the new structure will be 1.15 meters, whereas 1.2 is required. And then if you go from the building outward, that is the 3.16 to 3.74.
Okay, thank you. I do have one more question for you, Mr. Chair. With respect to the Planning Act, does a new roof and columns constitute an enclosed porch or an unenclosed porch? Because you mentioned that the staff recommended the unenclosed porch be approved.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's considered an unenclosed porch because there are no sides on it.
Okay, thank you.
Lee?
Dear Mr. Chair, I have a couple questions as well. First of all, I guess the simpler question, the pillars that are going to come down to support the front of this structure, is there any concerns about sightline visibility coming from Gordon Street? You're right at that intersection there. Is there any concerns there? I can't see if transportation had to look at this or not.
So through you, Mr. Chair, no, there were no concerns noted through the Transportation Department.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Chair, just the second question. With regards to the heritage comments, it does say in here that potentially if this building was designated a heritage structure, that this could have to be removed. That's how I'm reading this. I'm just wondering if the applicants are aware of this, that potentially going forward at some time in the future, it could be asked that this is removed.
Yeah, if I can just speak to that, yes. As I mentioned before, this structure is not attached to the building, so we're not actually enforcing any load or any implications to the existing structure of the building. It's freestanding.
Yeah, so Mr. Chair, I'm just so that they're aware that potentially it they could be asked to remove it. I'm just wondering if they're aware of that.
Okay, Lee, good point, good questions. Any other questions from the committee to staff at this time? Greg?
Mr. Chair, I'll follow on Lee's question there and to staff then. Is it possible that a heritage designation could force the land or city owners to remove that structure should that designation be imposed on the building?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's unlikely. And what they're proposing is that the property be listed on the Heritage Register, which just notes that it's a building of some significance, which is different than actually designating it under the Heritage Act. Those are two different things. So I think what staff is speaking of is listing it on the Heritage Registry, as opposed to actually designating it. To designate it, there has to be agreement from the owners in some cases. So I think that we're talking about two different things. If it were designated under the Heritage Act, I think the comments from the Heritage Planner were that they're not opposed to the structure because if they so wished at some time, it could be removed. I don't know that they were saying, and I'd have to check with the Heritage Planner, but I don't know that they were saying if it was designated, that structure would have to come off. Just that it could, if it was determined at some point in the future that it needed to.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, just to add to that, the way I read the comments as well is that it was a positive thing that the structure wasn't being connected to the building because it wouldn't do any further damage to the building during construction or if it ever was to be removed. So the kind of the core of protecting that heritage structure would remain in place. Questions, further questions before we open it up to the public? Seeing none, so we will move on to the public portion of this item. And again, just to confirm, We have received some letters of concern from residents and who may be listening this evening. And the committee has received a copy of those letters and have had an opportunity to review those letters, and they were addressed by staff. And so I'll just confirm my records again show no members of the public have registered to speak further to those letters during this meeting. Is that accurate, Emma?
Through the chair, yes, that is accurate. We just had the applicants registered.
Okay, very good. So with that being said, the public considerations have been reviewed, and we do not have any further members of the public registered for this item. So I will formally close the public portion of this item. And I'll ask if the committee have any further questions of clarification. Seeing none, so then I will look for a motion from the committee. Mike?
I'll move that the application be approved subject to the conditions as laid out by the staff.
Thank you. And seeking a seconder, Greg? Is there any discussion on that motion? No discussion, we can call the vote.
Thank you. All those in favor, please raise your hand and leave it raised until you hear your name called. Tara Gaskin, Virginia Kershaw, Michael Bodner, Lee Reiner, Greg Kempa, Dan Nemesniak, and Christina Brooks. Thank you. That carried unanimously.
Okay, moving on to the next application in our agenda. This is the consent application that we have seen before. It has been modified. So it is technically a new application. So consent application B11-2021 for 9 Broad Street and 130 Terrace Hill Street. Our agents, Bob Phillips from JH Cahoon Engineering, should be joining us. Here he comes. Mr. Phillips, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm here with Dominic Zavarella somewhere. I actually don't see him, but no, I don't see him, but he is here, I believe. There he is. This is a similar but different application that was presented at the March meeting. It is the facts around the lot. It was originally 2 parcels of land that inadvertently merged. This application recreates the original lot with a slight modification. The difference between the application that was presented in March is that now the proposal is for a single family house rather than a semi-detached house. The overall footprint of the residence, I'll call it, has reduced significantly from what was proposed before, which increased side yards. And as if you can recall, there are some challenging grading issues on this particular site, but with a better or a different design for the dwelling unit, we're able to eliminate a majority of the retaining walls on the property and not impact the neighbors so much. There is actually the proposed development can be handled independent of the neighbors, although I understand some discussions with some of the neighbors have gone on again about some work on their properties, but they are not required for this proposed development to go ahead. It's certainly a much simpler development, mostly because the size of the proposed residence is smaller. Some of the issues that were presented during the last meeting had to do with the overall scale of the development and cutting off sight lines for neighbors. Those have been reflected with the new design. Short of that, I'll answer any questions you might have. We have read the planning staff report and are supportive of the conditions that have been outlined as far as conditions of approval for this development. I'm here to answer any questions. Dominic is with me. He can answer any questions.
Not sure if you can hear me.
Yep, Dominic, we can hear you.
Okay. No, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure I was in the loop here.
Do I have any questions from the committee to the applicant or owner? Mike? Mike, you'll have to just unmute yourself. It looks like you kind of did the opposite.
There, that better?
Yep.
Okay, as long as you can hear me. This question would be either for Mr. Zavarella or for Mr. Phillips. I understand from the staff now that there's no longer a need for a full perimeter wide retaining wall. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And I understand too from staff that you don't have to fully excavate the site now to accommodate the single family building. Is that correct?
That's correct as well.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Virginia?
Just curious if you have a rendering of what the single-family residence will look like. Is it going to be 2 stories? What's the size difference from the last proposal? You have a little bit more details about it?
I believe if you take a look at your package, there is a front elevation and a rear elevation that was included in the package. It's hard to say it. It's hard to say it's like a bungalow structure because it's certainly it is configured to conform to the grades on the property, which, you know, if you can recall, there is some large grade differences from both, I'm going to call it north to south, as well as from, I got to get this right, east to west, going towards the front. And the house is like, it's a custom designed house to fit those grades on the property. It's certainly much lower in stature than the original design. And although I don't have a number in front of me, but I'm going to estimate that the footprint's probably been reduced from 30 to 40% from the original. It's not as deep. The rear yard of this proposed residence is more consistent with the residence to the right as you look at the property from the street.
Virginia, that's good. You've been able to locate those in your package. Yeah, and thanks for those. Those are it always paints a bigger picture than just describing it. Greg?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Phillips, I understand that I'm going to be asking an engineer to make some guesses, but can you give me a feel for the size of the retention wall that would be along the left-hand side of the proposed home? Again, as you're looking at it from the street, and understanding the earlier comments that staff is suggesting that we won't need retaining walls around the entire perimeter. Where specifically would we not have retaining walls, and where would we see them? And again, some idea about the height.
As you look at the proposed residence from the street, and that would be along the north boundary, adjacent to the lots that front onto Terrace Hill, we actually have no retaining wall along that side. We've been able to accommodate the proposed residence with just grading, sloping off, because Mr. Zavarella owns the lot at 130 Terrace Hill, which backs onto the subject lands. So they can do some grading in there. And if you look at the building elevation, you can see that we've created through the residence and the construction of the house, a higher wall along that side. So that eliminated that retaining wall. On the right-hand side, there is an existing retaining wall that kind of straddles the property line. The grading so that there is not a significant wall along that side. The only retaining walls that we do have on this plan now are in the rear yard of the proposed residence. And sorry, I can't read the numbers on my sketch because it's as small as probably yours. But they are just to kind of terrace the backyard to give the occupants of this building like a flatter area sort of in the rear yard. I hope those answer your questions.
Thank you, Bob.
Any other questions from the committee to the applicants or agent? Seeing none, we will have staff present the details of the report and the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just wait for Alexandra to put up my. So if you could move to the third slide, Alexandra, I think Bob explained what's going on here pretty well. So I just wanted to touch a little bit on the lands that were merged due to the same ownership. This sketch shows the original assessment map and the original reference plan that that laid out this lot, and the configuration of the existing lot is very similar to this one. Next slide. So the applicants are proposing to sever the southern portion of the lands, having a lot area of 598.88 square meters, and retain the parcel having an area of 595.95 square meters along Terrace Hill. This is, as the committee is aware, this is similar to the application that was refused by the committee in March. And in that instance, the applicant was proposing a semi-detached. Next slide. So this is the site plan, and as Bob just pointed out, there's no longer a retaining wall along the north, or as you're looking at this drawing, that would be the right-hand side. You can see the retaining wall in the rear yard for the terracing that Bob was speaking of, and then there's some along the southern or the left-hand side. Next slide. So that's the front view, showing the terracing down the left-hand side. Next slide. And this is the rear view, showing the retaining wall on the left-hand side or the south side. Next slide. And then that's the left elevation. So the front yard is shown. I think the front yard is on the right-hand side. And then the last slide, or the next slide, even though it says rear elevation, it's actually the southern elevation, and the front door is on the left-hand side. So these applications were circulated to all applicable departments and agencies. Engineering services provided comments that they'll be requiring the applicant to provide a satisfactory grading and drainage plan as a condition of consent. And further, if the grading and drainage plan determined that the height of the new retaining wall exceeds 1 meter, then the owner must provide an engineering report provided by a qualified geotechnical engineer. And that's been included as a condition of consent. With respect to the public circulation, notice of public hearing was issued to all property owners within 60 meters by personal mail and also by posting a sign on the site. We didn't receive any letters of comment. However, I did have 2 property owners contact me by phone. Their concerns, as I gather, relate to the ability of the municipality to restrict the use of the property to a single detached dwelling. And although planning staff didn't include a condition requiring that a single detached unit be constructed, there are ways to ensure that this occurs. Planning staff in the previous application were supportive of the semi-detached and the severance at that time. So we didn't include a condition in our staff recommendation, but there is a way for that to occur. One way is to impose a condition that would require a minor zoning amendment that would restrict the property to a single detached unit only. That would require a zoning amendment application along with a fee that has to be approved by City Council. The second method of ensuring that a single is constructed is to impose a condition that would require a site plan agreement to be signed by the applicant prior to the consent issuance, the certificate issuance, and that securities be posted along with that site plan control agreement. And then we would require an undertaking that the applicant would register the agreement upon the severance being completed. So there are a couple of avenues to ensure that a single is constructed on the property. So with respect to staff's analysis of this severance, in considering it, we have to have regard for section 5124 of the Planning Act. And the criteria include whether the plan conforms to the official plan, does the dimension and shape of the lot fit in with the neighborhood, are there adequate utilities and other municipal services. And there are also criteria in the official plan very similar to those requirements. And in staff's opinion, the consent application is for the purpose of recreating a previously existing lot. The retained parcel can adequately accommodate the existing single detached dwelling. The severed parcel meets all the minimum lot dimensions of the RC zone, or the residential conversion zone, which is what this property is located in. And the site plan control process will provide an opportunity to review the functionality of the site, to review the placement of the building, placement of the driveway, the overall design and grading, and any retaining walls. So based on all of those considerations, planning staff are recommending that the application be approved. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any questions of staff at this point from the committee? Mike?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I do have a couple of questions from staff. Now, you purposely left out the two requirements, the one for the minor zoning bylaw change, because you want to make sure it's a single unit and not a double. And then the other was that you left out the site plan. If the committee okays it for a single, then why do we need to have a minor zoning bylaw change? Because if you look at refer 7.3 in that application, it says the bylaw already allows for a single. Are you saying that if we allow, even if we allow it, the builder can go ahead and build a double?
Through you, Mr. Chair. The property is zoned residential conversion, which permits singles, semis, triplexes. So even though the committee considers it for single, and we have a single in front of us, if the property was to be granted a severance and then changed hands, a new owner could come in with a plan for a semi-detached unit, and we wouldn't have any way to restrict that through the zoning. So, you know, if this is a concern, we put, you know, we have two conditions that the committee could use. You don't need to use both of them. It's an either or. You know, a rezoning is a more onerous process to ensure that a single is constructed. It's more costly for the applicant. It takes a much longer period of time. Or you could use the site plan process, whereby, you know, they enter into the agreement, they provide us the securities, they give us an undertaking that it's going to occur. So yes, the zoning would permit a semi-detached.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions of staff from the committee? I just have one through the two options, through the site plan agreement option. I guess if the applicant wished to add an additional residential dwelling or unit in this proposed single detached dwelling. Is that permitted in the residential conversion zone?
So there's a couple through you, Mr. Chair, or to you, Mr. Chair. There's a couple of items. One that I should clarify is that the applicant has already submitted an application for site plan control for a single detached unit. And then to your question, the residential conversion zone does not permit secondary units as apartments. It does permit semi-detached duplexes, that sort of thing. So after the fact, you know, could they duplex it? Well, it would be constructed as a single. So, you know, the residential conversion zone does allow apartments, like single detached units, to be converted into apartments, but that would be, you know, not the intent of the site plan.
Okay, that's helpful. Any further questions before I open it up to the public? Mr. Phillips, I saw that you had your hand up there, but we'll wait for clarification. Okay, so my records show we do have 3 members of the public who have registered to speak to this item. We have Dan, Tyler, and Helena.
That is correct. And I believe we have Mr. Lazarus first, and he is just calling in on the phone.
Okay, so Dan, when you're ready, it looks like you've unmuted yourself.
Yeah, hello.
Hello, we can
You
hear
can hear me fine?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm Dan Lazarus. I live at 11 Broad Street, next door to the proposed development. It would be my preference that the property not be developed at all, but I do recognize Dominic's right to do something with it. Obviously, the previous plan, which was declined, was far too aggressive and potentially dangerous. But as much as I hate to admit it, this plan does seem to address most of our concerns. Dominic and I have been in discussions about replacing the cinder block wall in between the properties, and I'm sure we're going to come to an agreement on that, assuming the plan goes forward. Even though it is a much less aggressive plan, I do still have some concerns regarding soil stability, zoning, and the retaining walls, which it appears the planners has addressed in his recommendations through the grading and drainage plans and site control phases. I'd like it to be noted that if a pre-construction survey is required, that I be included. Again, the plan seems to be much more acceptable than the previous one, as long as I have assurances that the conditions, that soil stability, retaining walls, et cetera, are all okay, and there won't be any significant changes to the proposed building, or that it could be turned into a student residence or something like that after it's built. It would appear that this plan is I could live with it, provided those recommendations go through. And I thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Any questions of clarification to our resident? I see none. So we will move on to our next resident, Tyler. Tyler, welcome back. Nice to see you again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hello to the committee. Good evening. City Planning Department, Mr. Phillips, Mr. Zavarella. Okay, so this won't be as long as last time. I think you all remember. I hope you all reviewed application B04/2021 to have some context in where we're coming. The history is important. It's still relevant. So to start off on a positive note, I applaud the builder and his associates. They heard all of our concerns and they made an effort to address most of them. When I look at this plan as a layman, I really don't see how this is going to negatively affect my property. I'm comfortable saying that. However, doesn't really matter. It's a moot point, irrelevant. And you guys already know why, because we just found out, well, I've known for a little while, that there is no tool, there's no formal tool or mechanism keeping the builder from reverting back to the original plan. That plan again being B04/2021, the plan that I'm staunchly opposed to. If the committee cannot impose strict conditions to make sure that the development does not revert back into that plan, then the committee must or should, or I recommend that they decline this severance, because a vote for this proposal without those mechanisms and tools in place is a vote for the proposal that you've already declined. It's as simple as I can kind of get it together. Again, I would urge the committee to come up with a way and using all and any tools and mechanisms that they can to make sure that the plan in front of us here with the single detached dwelling without retaining walls bordering all the perimeters is what in fact will be built. I'm very skeptical that a security deposit will do it. There's a lot of money to be made compared to building a single, compared to building a semi. Probably trumps whatever securities would be in place. You know, we all can do the math. So anyways, that's where I'm at. So please impose some conditions. And if you can do that, you should vote for it. If you can't do that, you've already voted against it once. Why? It's a vote for it again. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler. Any questions of clarification to our residents? I see no questions. So we have one final resident to speak, Helena. There you are. So just unmute yourself so we can hear you.
There we go. Oh, hello.
There we go. Perfect.
All right. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm at 126 Terrace Hill, and both the properties that Mr. Zavarella has, but my property. Yes, he's gone and done everything that we requested, and I'm fine with that, and that's great. Again, as Tyler has said, what guarantee do we have that if he takes this, he doesn't revert back to the original property? But if he's going to go ahead with the single one, that's wonderful. That's all I can say. But I agree with Tyler and I agree with Dan. Can you give us any assurances that he cannot go back to the semi-detached? Other than that, if he stays with what he's got right now, that's fine with me. I've got no complaints. And that's it, really.
Excellent. Any questions of our resident from the committee?
Can you answer that?
Yeah, we'll have an opportunity for our agent and applicant to respond to some of the residents' concerns and provide some assurance.
Okay.
Any questions, clarification to Helena? Seeing none. So I will just confirm with our clerk that we have heard the residents who have registered to speak to this item.
Through the chair, that's correct. We have heard from all the registered residents.
Okay. So with that being said, I will formally close the public portion. I will allow Mr. Phillips and Mr. Zavarella an opportunity to provide any further response or clarification in response to the residents' concerns or remaining concerns. And then I will ask staff as well to provide some clarification and just walk us through those two options again, once Mr. Phillips and Zavarella have had a chance to speak. So Mr. Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, as an initial vote of good faith about constructing a single family, we have submitted site plan application for a single family. There is no intent to go back to the semi at this particular point, okay? We want to follow through on that site plan approval, and you know, Casey's second option about imposing a condition that says we must complete the site plan approval for a single family house prior to the completion of the severance. So the lot doesn't get created unless we finish that site plan approval for a single family house is totally fine with us. We are pleased to deal with staff on technical matters that are outlined sort of in the planning staff report through the site plan approval process. That is, you know, and I'm sure if we ask Dominic right here, he will say, my intention is to build a single family house. If we complete the site plan approval, complete the severance, the site plan gets registered against the property. In order for something else to happen, more approvals have to be granted by the city. We've listened to the residents on the proposal, moved the house around. You know, I don't want to go back to the semi-detached and whether we could have pursued appeals through that process. We did not. I think that is a very strong indication that we heard the residents, we've addressed the residents' concern, and we want to move ahead with a single family house. I hope that you will see that. And as far as I'm concerned, it's a friendly amendment to the conditions to include the one about site plan approval. That includes only a single family house prior to the completion of the severance. And we hope the committee will see it and move forward with that. The rezoning process is onerous, it's time consuming, and it's expensive. There's enough challenges with this lot, which obviously we think we know we can address, and we'd like to proceed. Dominic, if you want to fire anything in, great, but I think I've expressed your sentiments and where we got to through the two applications. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No, I think, Bob, you've covered it all. I want to thank the neighbors for their cooperation, and trust, I have no intention of going back to a semi. The plan that we submitted previously was aggressive, but it was also very costly to do with all the retaining walls. It just makes more sense to build a single family on this property with less retaining walls and not impacting the neighbors as the other plan was going to do. So I have no intentions whatsoever. I'll do what Bob said to go through the site plan process and put a condition in there that it's going to be a single. I'll put up whatever securities I need to put up, and that's what I'm gonna do. I think it would be builder developer suicide if I tried to do anything different. Thank you.
Just as a quick comment, doing it through the site plan approval process does get registered on title, and basically, heaven forbid, Dominic sells the property to someone else, it's still there. It's registered on title. So I hope that helps the committee.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for those comments. I'm sure they are greatly appreciated to not only the committee, but to the residents as well. Do I have any further questions of clarification to the applicants or agent at this time? Seeing none, so I'll just give an opportunity if there's any further questions or clarification required from staff. I know I had mentioned it before, but Mr. Phillips did a pretty decent job explaining how the site plan option would work. Is there any request to hear from staff about either of those options? So we have Greg.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So Casey, how then would this work? What is it that the committee would like to do if they thought to include a site plan amendment to the application?
Through you, Mr. Chair. If the committee so wishes to impose a condition for site plan agreement, you would just need to make a recommendation. Someone would need to make a recommendation that the application be approved with the following amendment. And you would either need to decide that you wanted to go through a zoning amendment or through site plan, whichever condition you want to include. If it was to go the site plan route, I would suggest that the agreement be signed and that the securities be posted before the final consent certificate is granted.
Consent certificate meaning approval of this application.
Correct.
All right. Okay.
Casey, do we have an active application for site plan? Do we have an application number that we would be able to reference in this wording if the committee so choose?
We do not yet. It has been submitted. I do not believe that it's been completely processed yet in order to receive a site plan number, but I can, while you're right there, I can look on my database and see if it has been.
Okay, if not, we obviously reference the property address. Any further questions of clarification? Mike?
Yes, for you, Mr. Chair, to staff, do we have to make a motion to either to accept it and then make a second amendment to that motion? Or do we just do one motion given the restrictions and the conditions?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would refer to the Clerk's Department to for the Robertson's Rules of Order to determine that.
Thanks, Casey. Through the chair, so once we have a mover and seconder to put the motion on the floor, I would recommend that we move the amendment for the condition, and then we'll vote on the resolution as amended.
And through you, Mr. Chair, I have looked on the database and it has been assigned a number, so it's SPC 14-21.
Very good, thank you. Any final questions, clarification before we get a motion on the floor? Okay, seeing none, so we will look for a member of the committee to move a motion. Virginia?
Through you, I'll move that the original motion, that application B 11/2021 to sever parcel of land from south portions of the lands municipally addresses 9 Broad Street and 130 Terrace Hill be approved subject to the conditions attached as Appendix A to the report. And I can also move an amendment if that's the way the committee wants as well.
Okay, so I'll be looking for a seconder to that motion. Mike? Any discussion on that motion? Lee?
More or less a general comment to ease the concerns of the residents. What we're going to do is essentially what I believe Tyler spoke to, hopefully, and have an amendment so that the site plan control is attached to this, and that should ease any concerns. I just want to speak to that. This is essentially an example of how committee of adjustment is supposed to work, where an initial application came in that wasn't necessarily appropriate, and then it came back with some changes to it that were more fitting and more suiting. So I just want to kind of put that out there that I don't believe there should be any concerns going forward with this.
Thank you, Lee. Any other comments? I guess, Virginia, you had mentioned you were going to make the amending note to that motion.
Yes, I can move an amendment to this motion that the application enter into an agreement with the city regarding site plan agreement SPC 1421 to fulfill the requirements to ensure that it remains a single family dwelling, and that includes providing the necessary securities. Something along that lines. I think Casey can wordsmith that properly. But I'd like to go the site plan control avenue versus a full rezoning. Doesn't make sense to do full rezoning.
Any comments on the amendment?
Through the chair, Virginia, do you see what I have on my screen right now? Are you agreeable with this? That the following be added as a condition of consent, the applicant be required to complete site plan approval SPC 1421 for a single detached lot to be approved prior to the final consent certificate being issued?
I'm okay with that as long as there's nothing about securities in there. And I think planning requires the notation about securities being provided as well. But yes, that's the general intent, definitely.
Thank you.
Casey?
Thanks, through you, Mr. Chair. Actually, now it's not on my screen, but we have to make sure that we don't require site plan approval to be granted prior to the consent, because we can't do that. We can't grant final site plan approval until the lot is actually created. So we need to make sure the wording says that they enter into the agreement and that they supply the securities and that they provide an undertaking to register it upon the final approval. Because if we say that they have to receive final site plan approval, we send ourselves into a cat and mouse. We can't complete one because we don't have the other one completed.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. We will get that wording wordsmith to make sure it reflects what we're.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good point. Thank you, Casey. Greg, did you have your hand up?
I did, Mr. Chair. It was really about the timing that Emma and Casey were going through as to what it is that we're approving prior to things going through. And my initial thought was, did we have to defer this for a month until we got a wordsmith? But it sounds like it's happening in real time.
Yes, that's correct. We can do it in real time. No need for a deferral.
Thank you, Emma.
Yeah, I think the wording that we have certainly captures the intent, and we can leave it to staff to clean it up for the decision. Any further comments? Mike?
Yes, I'll second Virginia's amendment if that's required by the committee.
Emma, can you confirm, or is that a friendly amendment?
I will leave that up to Virginia to decide if that's, well, no, sorry, she moved the amendment. So we will get a seconder and then we will call the vote on the amendment. And I can display the amendment. Casey sent me the wording for that, so I will share the final wording with you. That's
okay,
the
oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. The amendment is on the screen for you now.
So just to confirm, we will be voting on adding this this condition as an amendment, and then we will vote on the general decision.
Yes, then we will vote on the resolution as amended.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. So if you're okay, I will go on to the vote on the amendment.
Please do.
Thank you. All those in favor, please raise your hand and leave it raised until you hear your name called. Tara Gaskin, Virginia Kershaw, Michael Bodner, Lee Reiner, Greg Kempa, Dan Nemesniak, and Christina Brooks. Thank you. The amendment carried unanimously. And now if you'd like, we can move on to the resolution as amended. Thank you. All those in favor, please raise your hand and leave it raised until you hear your name called. Tara Gaskin, Virginia Kershaw, Michael Bodner, Lee Reiner, Greg Kempa, Dan Nemesniak, and Christina Brooks. Thank you. The item as amended carried unanimously.
Excellent. And like Lee mentioned, he's still holding his hand up. He must be frozen. Oh, there he goes. So I think that's a really good example of how residents and the applicants and developers can work together. Like the applicant mentioned, the first proposal was a little bit aggressive, and the single detached option certainly provides a lot more flexibility and kind of less impact on the surrounding neighbors. So it's always nice to see. Is everybody comfortable? Do we need a break? Nothing? Okay. I see Tara's got a friend joining her.
This is Tara showing off as well she should.
Yes, congratulations. Well, next item on the agenda, this is a minor variance application A17-2021 for 101 St. Paul Ave. Our applicant, John, should be joining us.
Through the chair, I do believe we skipped one, possibly again. 3.5 application A18-2021.
Yeah, you're right.
No problem.
Just testing you. Yeah, so we'll take a step back. We'll go to the variance application for A18-2021, 168 Tollgate Road, Catherine and Bob.
And I can confirm Catherine and Bob, they were having issues with their video, but they are on a call.
Okay, yeah, I see them there. They're there twice. So we'll hear from one of them, I'm sure. Catherine, Bob, can you hear us?
Yes, good evening, committee members and attendees. Bob and Catherine Ballard. We live at 168 Tollgate Road, and I'm speaking on behalf of both of us. We've applied for a minor variance for relief from the zoning bylaw that requires that we leave at least 50% of the front of the property unpaved. We're still not quite sure how it happened, but we contracted with a local paver, a very reputable one, to put the driveway in, and we did discuss with him permits, and on our bill we did pay for a permit. However, it turned out after the fact that it wasn't the permit that was required for what we actually had installed, and for that we were really apologetic. It's in, and we did realize that it was going to take out some of the grassed areas, so we tried to make it look as attractive as possible for the neighbours and to enhance the properties around. So we put an edging in, and we also were cognizant of drainage. So we left flower beds around all sides of the drive, flower beds and grass. So our application is for that. We put it in purely for safety reasons, because Tollgate Road turns out to be busier than we realized it would be. When we purchased the house, it was early in 2019, and because of the first COVID lockdown, there wasn't very much traffic, especially when we were viewing the property. And when we moved in over the months, it got busier and busier, and it turned out that we realized that for safety reasons for us and for other road users, it would be beneficial to have this turnaround on our drive. It actually, I believe, I think we've applied for a 25% relief on the bylaw. We thought it was just 10% extra that was actually outside, but I believe it's the way you calculate it that it looks like it's bigger than it really is. But and so far the turnaround has been positively received by the neighbours. The neighbours think it's a good idea. The neighbours have actually commented that they have the same issue, and they have space in order to turn around. So I want to thank the committee for looking at this for us, and hope you realise that this is purely done for safety reasons with regards to the busy road, the schools that are in close proximity. We have the railway line that also causes congestion quite often during the day, and this turnaround has eased the safety concerns that we had. So thank you to the committee anyway. I don't know if you want to add anything, Bob.
No, it's fine.
Okay, thank you. Good information, good background. Any questions from the committee to the applicants? Greg?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Catherine, Bob, I commend you on taking the safer approach on this, and while I can't address what brought you to this point with us, it's got to be a much safer way to approach getting your car to that driveway. So good on you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee at this time? Okay, seeing none, we'll ask staff to join us and present the staff report.
Good evening, Chair, members of the committee. So planning staff have received a minor variance application for 168 Tollgate Road. The property is located on the north side of Tollgate Road, east of Paris Road. The lands are designated residential area low density in the official plan and zoned residential type 1B in the zoning bylaw. A single detached dwelling currently occupies the land. And here's an image of the extended driveway and the landscaping. So the applicant has constructed a driveway that displaces the minimum amount of landscaped open space required for a front yard in a residential zone. The driveway was widened to 8.95 meters in order to provide an area for safe turning movements on the subject lands so that the owner can avoid reversing onto Tollgate Road. The applicant is requesting a variance due to an error with the driveway contractor. To rectify this situation, the applicant is seeking relief from section 6.18.3.9 to permit a minimum of 25% landscaped open space in a front yard of a residential zone. And here's just a site plan illustrating the driveway and the existing house.
So, excuse me, sorry, through the chair, Alexandra, you're not sharing your screen, so they can't see the photos.
My apologies. I thought I had pressed share screen.
That's okay.
So let's go back.
I'm sure most of us were following along in our agenda anyways.
Sorry about that, Chair and members of the committee. So here's just an image of the aerial photo illustrating the existing or the lot fabric. This aerial photo was taken prior to the consent application and severance and creation of the existing single detached dwelling. Here's an image of the now existing single detached dwelling. And here's an image of the driveway and landscaped open space provided on the front yard. And here as well is the site plan illustrating the existing single detached residence as well as the front yard driveway area. So in order for a minor variance to be approved, the application must meet the 4 tests of section 45(1) of the Planning Act. The proposed reduced minimum landscaped open space is considered minor in nature and appropriate use and development of the lands as it is not expected to have an adverse impact on neighboring properties. Enlarged driveways are very common along Tollgate Road, and this is in order to reduce reversing onto Tollgate Road, and the subject lands and will be very similar to several neighboring properties. The widening of the driveway was completed by the new owner and the applicant, and it was approved after the site plan control, or it was done after the approval of the site plan control application that created the single detached dwelling on the lot. The intent of 50% landscaped open space within a residential zone is to ensure that sufficient front yard landscaping is provided and that there are no concerns regarding stormwater or additional hard surfacing. No adverse comments were received from the engineering department regarding stormwater management of the subject lands. The proposed minor variance will allow for adequate landscaping as seen in the previous photo. as well as creates a safer access for the owners and for the Tollgate Road right-of-way. The majority of properties, again, on Tollgate Road have been widened, and the current situation is in keeping with the character of the neighborhood. The proposed 25% is appropriate, and it will maintain the existing front yard how it is, and is similar to, again, lots in the neighborhood. The applicant has, as illustrated in the photo, provided additional plantings within the front yard and along the driveway in order to visually enhance the front yard and lessen the impacts of a modified driveway. Planning staff are of the opinion that the reduced minimum front yard landscaped open space will not create a negative impact on the surrounding properties, and that the general intent of the zoning bylaw and official plan is maintained. One member of the public had contacted staff, and it was only in regards to requesting further information and understanding the Planning Act process and the Committee of Adjustment process, and did not have any comments on the application itself. So looking at the proposal and the variance at hand, planning staff recommend that application A18-2021 be approved. Thank you, and I'll be able to take any questions.
Do we have any questions of staff from the committee? Seeing none. So I will open up the public portion of this item and just confirm again that we have no members of the public who have registered to speak to this item.
Through the chair, that's correct. There are no members of the public.
Very good. And with that being said, I'll formally close the public portion of this item, and I will ask the committee if there's any further questions of clarification to the applicant or to staff. Seeing none, I will ask if the committee is prepared to move a motion. Greg?
Mr. Chair, I'd move that application A18/2021 be approved as shown in the agenda.
Seconder? Chris? Any discussion on that motion? I'll just echo Greg's comments. There's certain situations where this is certainly appropriate. I understand the need to maintain landscaping in a residential area. Tollgate Road is busy, and there are lots of examples along the stretch of road that are enlarged or provide access or vehicle access to turn around. So it's appropriate in this situation. Any other comments before we call the vote? Okay, we will call the vote.
Thank you. All those in favor, please raise your hand and leave it raised until you hear your name called. Virginia Kershaw, Michael Bodnar, Lee Reiner, Greg Kempa, Dan Nemesiak, Christina Brooks, Tara Gaskin. Thank you. The item carried unanimously.
Excellent. So now we will go and bring John in for application for minor variance A17-101 St. Paul Ave. Sorry, John. You just have to unmute yourself first. There we go.
Hello, committee. My name is John Sibinik. I'm the agent for this application at 101 St. Paul Avenue. The purpose of this minor variance application is to legalize and maintain the rear yard setback of the two-story detached dwelling, which was constructed in 2017. The current owners purchased the property on November 2019, and shortly thereafter was identified that there was an open permit with the city. The open permit also requested the owners obtain a survey with the task of verifying the building setbacks and the setback of the retaining wall and stair in the road allowance. Zoning bylaw requires a minimum of 7.5 meter rear yard setback, whereas the survey identified 7.34 meters. So there's a deficiency of about 0.16 of a meter, which is around 2% of the required setback. Also, I was told initially that the stair and the hard landscaping were not eligible for a minor variance application, and would it require an encroachment agreement application? But I believe I received comments recently that say that the stair is considered landscaping, and therefore it may be exempt, but I'll let the committee determine that. The site is pretty is situated in a unique environment there. There's a lot of sloping of hills, a lot of native trees, provides excellent screening to the side and the rear yard of the neighbors. And I believe the 2% is considered minor, but I believe we're in compliance with the general intent of the zoning bylaw. Be pleased to answer any questions the committee has, or any questions.
Thank you, John. Do I have any questions from the committee to the agent? Seeing none, we will invite staff to join us to present the recommendation.
I will share my screen first. Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. Planning staff have received an application for 101 St. Paul Avenue. This application is a minor variance application, and it's relating to the subject property, which is located on the east side of St. Paul Avenue, north of Cure Avenue. The lands are zoned residential area low density in the official plan, and zoned residential type 1C zone in the zoning bylaw 16090. An existing single detached dwelling exists on the property. The applicant is seeking relief for the rear yard deficiency due to a construction error during the placement of the foundation wall, which created a deficient rear yard. To rectify the situation, the applicant is seeking relief from section 7.4.2.1.6 of the zoning bylaw to permit a rear yard of 7.3 meters, whereas 7.5 meters is required. When evaluating the merits of a minor variance application, the Committee of Adjustment must be satisfied that the four tests of section 45(1) of the Planning Act have been met to be approved. This includes a minor variance must be minor in nature, desirable and appropriate development and use of the land, and the general intent and purpose of both the zoning bylaw and the official plan are maintained. The proposed rear yard is considered minor in nature and an appropriate use and development of the lands, as it is not expected to have an adverse impact on neighboring properties. The intent of the minimum rear yard provision is to ensure that sufficient amenity space is provided and that there are no privacy or overlook concerns between rear yards and dwelling units. At the time of the construction, there was an error in the placement of the foundation wall, which resulted in the rear yard deficiency of approximately 0.16 meters. And the applicant has now applied for the variance in order to rectify the error. Planning staff are of the opinion that the reduced rear yard of 7.3 will maintain adequate amenity space. Planning staff are of the opinion that the proposed rear yard will not create any negative impacts, and the intent, the general intent of the zoning bylaw and official plan are maintained. The agent had commented on the front yard steps, which from discussion with building department was considered landscaping, which there is no encroachment for landscaping required. Encroachment agreements are through our public works department and is not part of a Committee of Adjustment application. So that would be through the other departments. But at this time, no variance was required because it was considered as landscaping. This is a map of the area of public notification. From my understanding, 2 members of the public have registered and will be able to speak as part of the public process of this application. Going forward, in conclusion, having regard for section 45(1) of the Planning Act, Planning staff recommend that the application A17-2021 be approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any questions of staff from the committee? Seeing none. So as staff mentioned, we do have some members of the public who have registered to speak to this item. I'm just curious to know and confirm whether or not they would like to speak.
Through the chair, we are moving them over now. They did mention they might not have comments, but we will ask them to confirm.
Okay, so we'll start with Ashley. Ashley, if you have any comments or wish to speak or have any questions, now is your opportunity. If you wish to just continue listening to see how it goes, which I know you mentioned before, that's okay too.
Well, I'd like to leave it the way it is because we have a very large tree at the back of our property and the roots lean into the property behind us at 101 St. Paul. And I would be nervous that moving it even that little bit would impact my tree and my hill. So, and there are also a lot of other little trees along that property line that would be affected. And I like those trees for the small amount of protection it gives us. It gives us privacy.
Okay, so you are generally in support of the application for those reasons.
Absolutely.
Okay, very good. Any further questions or clarification of our resident, Ashley? Seeing none. Ashley, thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
Our next resident is Catherine. Catherine, same thing. If you have any comments or questions that you'd like to add at this time, now is your chance. Catherine, I see you've unmuted yourself. Did you have, oh, there you are. Oh, we can't hear you though.
Not sure why. It says I'm not muted.
There we go.
Okay. I didn't have any concerns at this time. I just wanted to hear what I registered just in case there were concerns. So.
Okay, very good. Any comments or questions of clarification from Catherine or to Catherine? Seeing none. Okay, so that's those are the two residents that I had on my list.
Through the chair, sorry, I believe we do have one more who is the new owner of the residence, Bettina Woolton, who is also joining us.
Okay. Bettina, welcome. I think you just muted yourself.
No, I think.
Oh, there's two of you.
Oh.
No problem. We can hear you.
Okay. We are the new owners, not until next month though. So I just wanted to listen in to see what the outcome was. I don't have any questions or concerns.
Very good. So you are also in support of the application?
Yes.
Excellent. It's so rare, so it's always nice to call those out. So those three residents, do we have any more, just to confirm?
Through the chair, no, that was all of them.
Okay, thank you. So with that being said, no more residents to speak, and we can formally close the public portion of this item. And I will ask the committee if there's any further questions of clarification to staff or to the agent. Staff.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Just to clarify for the members of the public, this application is relating to what is already existing on the lot. They're not proposing any changes to the exterior rear yard. It's just to have an after the fact variance that recognizes what is already existing. So there should not be any changes relating to the approval, if approved by committee, the approval of the application.
Thank you for that clarification. Any other questions? Seeing none, we will look for a motion from the committee. Lee?
Through Mr. Chair, I'll approve that. Sorry. I'll move that application A17 2021 be approved as set on the agenda.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Mike? Any discussion on that motion? And if there's no discussion, we can call a vote.
Thank you. All those in favor, please raise your hand and leave them raised until you hear your name called. Virginia Kershaw, Michael Bodnar, Lee Reiner, Greg Kempa, Dan Demisiak, Christina Brooks, Tara Gaskin. Thank you. That item carried unanimously.
Thank you. Thank you, committee.
Thank you. The next item, which I believe is our final item on the agenda this evening, is a consent and minor variance application B14, B15, and A20, 2021 for, I guess, what would be described as west of Cumberland Street. Mr. Phillips is still here. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. This is an application made by Dominic Zavarella to sever off 2 lots and a part of a lot on the south side of Cumberland. This is a severance that was done back in 1985 and lapsed because one of the conditions had to do with the creation of the Cumberland Street right-of-way and the extension of municipal services. Recently, an adjacent developer has completed the construction of Cumberland, which opened up the potential for development of these lots. Dominic had an old plan of subdivision that was registered to the west of these lots, which he is now pursuing development of and the construction of homes on, because the services are now available to him. He has entered into a cost-sharing agreement with that developer about the provision of the services to these lots. And we would request the committee kind of reestablish the severance that happened in 1985. It creates 2 standalone lots and then a part of a lot which will get merged with a lot or a part of a lot next door. Like it was all planned out many years ago to basically create 3 lots in this location. Dominic has, I think, 4 more lots to the west that he's going to develop as well. We've read the planning staff report, fully supportive of the conditions that are involved here, and we're seeking the committee's approval tonight. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and I know I thought Dominic was around. Maybe he left, but he certainly. I'm sure I can answer any questions the committee might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. I see Dominic's here. Dominic, do you have anything more to add?
No, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. It's just 2.5 more lots that I'm adding to the properties that I have to the west, as Bob said. But
okay.
Yeah, I got nothing further to add.
Okay, great. Questions from the committee, Greg?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And through you to Mr. Phillips, did I understand you to say that the one lot that has the narrowest back, and it will be merged on title with the one to the, I guess to be the west of at some point in time?
That's correct. That's correct. That creates another lot.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering why maybe you hadn't sectioned them out, but that makes sense to me. Thank you.
Just for your information, there was another owner that originally owned these 2.5 lots, and Dominic's purchased that from him.
Any questions, Mike?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Phillips, what are you planning to do with the 2 trees on that lot? I see in the picture, there's a couple of mature trees there.
To be honest, I don't exactly know where they are relative to the building footprint. The idea is to maintain sort of the same kind of development that is occurring across the street and what Dominic is bringing from the west end. To be honest, I don't know if they're impacted.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Phillips.
Any further questions to the applicant? I see none, so we will invite staff to present the report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chair, members of the committee, planning staff have received 2 consent applications and a minor variance application for the lands located west of the property municipally addressed as 17 Cumberland Street. The subject property currently has no associated municipal number at this time. The property is located on the south side of Cumberland Street, east of James Street. Again, this aerial photo is from the spring of 2017, prior to the extension of Cumberland Street. The Cumberland Street right-of-way has been extended at this point, as Mr. Phillips pointed out, and the applicant has entered into a cost-sharing agreement in regards to those. The property is designated low-density residential in the official plan and zoned residential type 1B in the zoning bylaw. The lands are currently vacant. The applications intend to sever the subject lands into 3 parcels as illustrated on this proposed severance plan. The second severed parcel is intended to merge with the undersized lot to the west of the subject lands. It's known as Lot 18 in Register Plan 1558 and is considered the receiving lands, as that application for the consent is technically considered a lot adjustment in the creation of that lot. To facilitate the construction of the eventual proposed single detached dwelling on each lot, the applicant is seeking a relief from the following section of the zoning bylaw, section 7.3.2.1.3, in order to permit lot coverage of 40% for all lots, whereas 35% is required. In order for a minor variance to be approved, an application must meet the 4 tests of section 45 of the Planning Act. It is planning staff's opinion that the minor variance requests for an increased lot coverage of 35% to 40% for all 3 lots is minor in nature, as the lots will still be able to accommodate adequate landscaping, amenity space, vehicle access, and snow storage, and will result in dwellings similar size and scale to the existing dwellings in the neighborhood, and will have a similar lot coverage as the proposed lots to the west. The proposed 40% lot coverage is appropriate for the development and use of the lands, as the proposed dwellings maintain the required side yard, front yard, and rear yard requirements, and will result in a dwelling as that is similar to what already exists in the character of the neighborhood. All required all required setbacks are continued to be met, and the variances are desirable for the appropriate development and use of land, as it will not result in adverse impacts or restrict development on the adjacent properties. The severance was reviewed in light of provincial and municipal policy, and staff are of the opinion that the proposed development meets the goals of these policies. The development will also be subject to site plan control, which will allow staff the opportunity to review the functionality of the site and the compatibility with the neighborhood. Planning staff recommend that application B14 2021, B15 2021, and A20 2021 be approved. Thank you, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Do you have any questions from the committee to staff? I just have one quick question about conditions. So these, I guess we call severed parcel 2, that little sliver that's required to be merged with the abutting parcel to the west. Is there a condition in that, in the list of conditions that speaks to the requirement for that to be consolidated?
Through you, to you, Mr. Chair, sorry. Yes, we have included in the Appendix A1, which relates to that creation of that lands or those lands. There is a requirement for the applicant to provide that the lands will be merged with the lot 18. So there is a requirement for them to do that as part of the conditions for this application.
Okay, just want to make sure that was covered off. Any further questions of staff? Seeing none, so we will open up the public portion of this application, and my notes tell me that there have been no members of the public who wish to speak to this item. And I'll just have our clerk, Emma, confirm.
Through the chair, that is correct. There is no applicants registered.
Okay, thank you. So with that being said, we'll close the public portion of the item. And I'll ask if the committee members have any questions, final questions of clarification to the applicant, agent, or staff. I see no hands, so we will look for a motion to be put on the floor. Chris?
Yes, I move that application B14-2021, B15-2021, and A20-2021 be approved as noted in the staff's report.
And do we have a seconder? Greg? Any discussion on the motion? No discussion, so we can have our clerk, Emma, call the vote.
Thank you. All those in favor, please raise your hand and leave it raised until you hear your name called. Virginia Kershaw, Michael Bodner, Lee Reiner, Dan Nemesiak, Christina Brooks, Tara Gaskin, and Greg Kempa. Thank you. That carried unanimously.
Okay, Mr. Phillips, Mr. Zavarellis, thanks for sticking around.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That concludes the items on our agenda for consideration. Just kind of moving through the rest of our agenda, presentations, delegations, we have none. Items for consideration, again, my notes show none. I just wondered if there was anything from staff that they'd like to add. Updates, anything?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Sean House will be returning as the Secretary Treasurer. He's just currently on paternity leave. And Breno O'Neill has left the city, so we're currently fulfilling that position. So hopefully there will be more planners in the future for Committee of Adjustment. And we thank Casey and Josh for helping out this round.
Yes, it's always nice to see some new faces around the table. Mike, you had an additional item?
Yes, I did, Mr. Chair. Do we need to discuss Mrs. Kershaw's request there for confirmation or clarification on resident rebuttals to applications regarding their full names and addresses?
Hi, through the chair. It's not an agenda item, so we technically can't speak to it tonight. I did send an email out this afternoon that gave you a little bit more clarification on the procedure, but I can confirm that we will be speaking with the supervisor of records and retention, and we'll get some clarification on our processes and share that with the committee in the coming weeks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Emma.
Thank you.
And just for clarification, Emma, if we wanted to add items to the agenda, we could do that at the beginning of the meeting?
We would have to do that prior to the agenda creation.
Okay. So just for future reference, I guess.
Absolutely. So we do just have the minutes though that we need to approve.
Yep. So yeah, last item, minutes. Everyone's had a chance to review the minutes from our previous meeting from April. Any errors, additions, or omissions? Seeing none, so I will look for a mover, Greg, seconder, to accept the minutes. Tara, I'll take that as a seconder. I saw you kind of throw your elbow up, so I'll take that. And I will call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. The motion is carried. That concludes the entire agenda this evening. Again, assuming we will see each other back in another month to review some more items. Again, great to see you. Thanks for you taking the time. Stay safe, stay healthy. Enjoy the outdoors.
Thanks. Have a good night.